So first of all, you have so much to share with us, and I think it's neat the journey that you made to get into podcasting. So give us a little background about yourself because that alone is a great story, especially being an FSCJ graduate.
Awesome. Yes. Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet all of you. Again, my name is Rita. Like she said, work at a remote podcast agency called Sweetfish Media. It's based in Orlando. I run currently 10 shows for various B2B and SaaS companies. But before I was able to be a podcast producer and do anything that I do, I had to go to college. And I actually graduated from FSCJ as a student. I majored in business supervision and management. And it was not the traditional 4-year route by any means. When I started, I actually was 18 and I went to FSCJ, got my cute little picture with my student ID, and I had no idea what I was going to be doing with my life, with my career, nothing. All I knew is that my parents told me I needed to go to college and I'd be on my own to figure out how to make it happen. So off I went. Initially, I was actually going to school to be a musician. So I got accepted to FSCJ under a talent grant for the FSCJ choir at the time, which was a really cool and fun experience. Um, but a year into me doing all of the things related to being a musician and thinking I wanted to do school, I had an internship that basically showed me the like behind the scenes of business. And I learned very quickly that although I loved music, I needed to find a job to one day support myself and my family. So I needed to do a career pivot into business. So long story short, I lost my scholarship when I made that decision because I had to choose to no longer be a part of the music program and decided to do something else. So I ended up working like 3 jobs at one time because I didn't want to receive any student loans. It took me like 4 or 5 years to graduate because I was doing all sorts of jobs and trying to get experience while I was in school to make sure that I could afford college and graduate without those loans. Um, Part of that process while I was getting my AA, I worked for the automotive industry for a couple years. So I worked for BMW and I worked for Tesla in different departments. And, that world was a very hectic world, and I was working my way up in the business, and I knew that I enjoyed the people that I worked with, but at the end of the day I realized that, like, why am I working with cars when I literally hate cars? Like, the name brand of Tesla especially, like, it was so cool to be able to work for Tesla, but it was like, I'm here and everyone says this is a great job, but I actually am miserable. I'm making the most money I've ever had made in my life. I was living on my own in a nice 2-bedroom condo in Tampa. I was only 22 at the time, and like everyone around me would have thought like, "Wow, that girl made it. She must be so happy." But I wasn't, and I decided to move back home, move back in with my parents, and start over and work on my business management degree at FSCJ. So it wasn't all easy, but we're here now. So that's kind of what man, didn't mean to give you a memoir, but here I am.
That's so funny. No, that's great. It gives everybody, it makes you very human, right? Because when you're talking to somebody that's successful, it's nice to know that they had, everybody falls and everybody, you either get up or you don't. And you're
Yeah.
a great example of, yeah, I got into a world that was kind of, glitzy and glamorous, but it wasn't for me. And so thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that. It's really important. We don't always pick the right career at first, and that's okay. What are you gonna, you find your way. I always tell my students that. So tell us, how on earth did you get into podcasting? Because it would seem very different from cars and music and everything. But
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a wild journey getting into it. Basically, I formally graduated from FSCJ in December of 2019. And then January 2020, I was working at a law firm my last year as a marketing coordinator. And in January of 2020, I was excited to go to my office and tell everybody that I had finally gotten my bachelor's and I was ready to get promoted into full-time marketing. And they very enthusiastically offered me a raise of $1.50. And I was offered to work for around $12 an hour after working all that time to getting a bachelor's. And I was devastated. I had no idea what I was going to do. Again, law firm, marketing, more business. I was thinking I was in the right place. And all I knew is that I needed to find another job. So I went on Indeed and I looked for jobs. And for some reason, in January of 2020, I thought to myself, maybe I should get a remote job. I have a feeling that might be a good idea. I'm not a psychic, but that ended up being a good idea because we all know what happened in 2020. All I did is I went and searched the word remote in Indeed. I highly recommend you guys do this, by the way. If you do not know what job you want to do and all you know is you want to work remote, do not limit yourself by location or job title. Type in the word remote and see what happens. That's what I did. And I saw a job opening for podcast producer. Right before I had decided I wanted to apply for podcast producer, I had started tinkering at the law firm with video production and video editing, and I taught myself how to do it. I went on YouTube, used Adobe Premiere Pro, all the tools that you would normally need to use to learn how to make videos because they had a tight budget and they didn't want to pay for somebody else to make them and make all the advertising. So as a coordinator, it was my job to find a way to create content for them on a budget. And the best way to do it was to do it myself. So luckily, I had something under my belt to submit when I applied for the podcast production job. A couple of videos that I had made, one for fun, a couple that I made at FSCJ actually in my final year. The marketing program, I made a video for my capstone project, and I was able to use that as part of my submission. So basically anything that I had ever created, I applied for this job. I thought it was fake because it seemed too good to be true, but after a couple of interviews and a very elaborate analogy on my end of how producing a podcast was like servicing a car for 30 minutes, I went into a spiel about how that happened. I don't know. It was kind of by chance. They decided, all right, at this point, it's April 2020. The world is on fire. We'll give you 1 week to try. So on my first day, they gave me 3 clients, and it was the same day that I Googled how to launch a podcast. I had gotten the job without actually knowing how to create or launch a podcast myself, and I figured it out. And here I am almost 2 years later. I definitely know way more now, especially since I have my own show. And it just goes to show you, sometimes when you don't have opportunities or opportunities are not presented to you, how I got into this is I tried to create the opportunity for myself.
I love that. There's a lot of pieces, and I got to pull out one. One is that so often, statistically, they say that women do not go for positions that that we're not experts at or something or close to
Mm-hmm.
that. And it's been proven over and over that men will. They'll jump at it. So, folks, wherever you are in your life, that's a great example. She had no clue and she went for it. And that's really, and look at where you are. You are where you want to be. And that's a great example of why you just take the leap. Worst case, you would have gotten fired after a week, right? So,
Right. Worst case, I would have just gone back to the law firm and I would have been the receptionist again at $12 an hour or whatever.
yeah, I think that's a great example of just taking the leap. Why not? You have really literally nothing to lose. Why not try it?
Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's great. So you and I have talked about this, and it's so important to have a vision and be focused and stay focused because podcasting and well, a lot of things in life are for the long haul, right? It doesn't happen
Right.
overnight. You're not going to have a million downloads, nothing like that. So can you share with us how you use the vision board and an action board to stay motivated and just keep going towards where you want to go, your goals?
Yes. So, all of you have probably heard what a vision board is. You kind of outline the words or traits that you want to create for your life. And while I was in that last year of the law firm, I was really feeling like I needed a vision, I needed a goal. Because I wanted more. So I made a vision board and I outlined like what I wanted my life to look like. Like if there were no rules or, I woke up tomorrow and it was just like the life I wanted to live, like what I wanted to be. And actually, I'm going to grab mine really quick to show you guys what mine is now. Because ever since then, I always make a vision board. One second, I'm going to grab it.
And that's a great example that she continues to do it because it works, right? So if you're having a hard time envisioning your future or what you want, or maybe this is a great, great thing to do. We're very visual people, so
So I'm not going to show you every part of my vision board because it is personal to me, but I will show you small parts of it to show you how you can do this. So at the top of my vision board, you'll see, it's kind of blurry with this background, but you'll see that I have a year listed at the top. So I have what I want my year, and I did this at the beginning of the year in January. And I have a word in the middle that I feature. So my word of the year this year is shine. And the reason why, it's because for the longest time, I felt like, I have skills and that I want to develop, and they're kind of like ready to be developed, but not quite yet. And when you have a diamond shines, but before the diamond shines, it's a rock. It has to be polished. You have to work at it. It has to become a diamond. So for me, that's my word is shine. And I have different aspects on my board to like show like, I have all sorts of things like family, career. Man, this blur. I have like, I'll show you my podcast session. So I have like me as a podcast producer and like all sorts of stuff. But anyways, you guys can Google a vision board. You get the point. You can make your own vision board however you like. But the difference is that I have an action board too. Because whenever you have a vision, and I learned this from being a podcast producer, I'll give you that analogy. So like as a podcast producer, I have to come up with a vision for a show. I have to come up with the premise of the show, who's going to be on the show, what's it going to look and sound like, and the colors and the branding and the entertainment and the people. All of those you have to visualize. But after you make the vision, you have to execute the vision. There's a plan that has to go in place to make that happen. So after that, I realized, okay, my vision is great. It's like cute and all, but I need an action plan. So what I do is I make these little sticky notes on a whiteboard. Let me try to actually, this one I can show you fine. I'm going to turn off my virtual background so you can see this one better. That's better. Okay, so, whoop, that didn't do it. 1 second. Sorry. Do none. Hit apply. Tell me whenever you guys can see this better. Okay, great.
that's great.
Fantastic. So you'll see here that at the top I have action board. And something you're going to notice very quickly is it's kind of empty. Weird, right? But the reason is because I have small steps of action that I take under like different categories. So for example, this is my podcast production category. And anytime I complete an action off of my action board, I take off the sticky note. So the goal is by the end of the year, your action board should be empty. And it's a visualization that everything you put on your vision board, you've acted on and put into place. And it feels really satisfying to look at an empty action board because you can look back, you take a picture of what it looked like before and be like, whoa, I did all that this year. That's so cool. So a combination of that for my personal life, but also professional life is very beneficial because if you're just working on a project, you could do this for a project. If you're working on like your life, like financial goals, like relationship goals, whatever it be, you can have an action board. You don't really need to limit yourself with it, but it's definitely a great thing to do, and that's what has helped me stay on track and move forward into having a podcast of my own.
Thank you. Yeah. As you can see, folks, the best word I can come up with you, Rita, is that you're a go-getter because you don't let, you're right. You just don't you're not letting yourself be boxed in. And I always try to, encourage my students to do that too. Think outside the box. And a lot of people don't get that, but you have given some great examples of doing that, just jumping into a job, creating your own job
Yeah.
and staying focused is crucial. We all have so much going on in our lives and we all have the same 24 hours and right? And people always say that, but you're giving us examples of how to use that time and stay on top of where we want to go. So
Yeah.
thank you. That's excellent. Yeah.
Awesome.
So you like, and so you have created like an amazing portfolio for your own resume, and you use podcasting to do it. And that's definitely one of the parts of this, like what we, when we first met and we're talking, it's an important part so that you can show off skills, and it's a living, breathing thing like we
Mhm.
talked about. So can you share how you did this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, anyone that knows me knows that I'm a huge Disney nerd and I'm obsessed with the all things Disney. Now that I've unblurred my background, my secrets are revealed. You can see all of my Disney things. And why I say that is that I've always had a dream of working for the company. And I've dreamed bigger than just working at the theme parks. My dream is to work with them at a corporate level. And if I don't get to work with them on a corporate level, I would love to try to become an influencer and work with them at an influencer creator level. So obviously, that doesn't happen overnight. And nothing about my path has been traditional. Like I said, I worked for 5 years to get my degree. Everything was like not traditional. It took me a long time. So, of course, whatever I do to try to work for Disney has to follow suit. It just won't be traditional. What most people do to work for Disney is they get into the Disney College program, it's an internship, and they work their way up after the internship from like working on the ground at the theme parks for many years, and they work their way up. I actually got accepted to the Disney College internship program in February of 2020. And I had to decide whether or not I was going to take the job that I'm doing now, which is remote, or work at Disney with the Disney College program in February of 2020. And again, not a psychic, maybe just have a really good gut, but I sat down with my mom and it's my dream job, but it's something about it didn't feel right. I decided to not accept the offer. Luckily for me, unfortunately for obviously the people that suffered during the pandemic, everyone that got accepted in the round that I got accepted in lost their job in 2 weeks because of the pandemic. And it just gives me shivers every time, or like chills to think about, like that could have been me. But I decided to do a job that was a little more untraditional, that would maybe give me more skills. But in doing that, even getting that acceptance, I was able to use it as a vehicle for me to connect with people at Disney and to start my podcast. So I have a personal podcast. It's called Bippity Boppity Business. It is all things Disney, but also Disney leadership, customer service, and values tied in. And the reason why I started it is I wanted to build my network and try to increase my chances of getting a job at Disney and learn more about the company, not just from the on the ground theme park worker, cast member, lower level, but really from the executive and corporate level. But also, it was a great way for me to increase my own opportunities as an individual, as a creator, because in creating this podcast, I am learning and growing and meeting all kinds of other people, not just people at Disney. So it's kind of grown into a bigger thing. And how I did it is I really got serious about my content on LinkedIn. So if you have not created a LinkedIn profile in 2022 where you're constantly posting your content at least once a week, you have a fully made LinkedIn profile, you will be left behind in the next few years of employment and recruitment. Really, Disney and all sorts of the other big companies maybe you dream of working for, Google, Amazon, like really anybody in those big seats, their recruiters are actively on LinkedIn. But here's the thing about LinkedIn, there's a lot more people on it. So how do you stand out? And how do you make content more consistently and more easily than, having to sit down every day and be like, you know what? I'm not that smart right now. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. Like I'm still a student. Like how do I even make content every week on a website where there's all sorts of business people, like, and they're going to actually like it? It's a podcast. Podcasting will make you stand out from other people. And here's why it's the best trick in the world. Because even if you're not an expert, you can bring people on your podcast that are experts. You ask them questions as you learn and grow about whatever areas of expertise that you want to develop, and they give you the answers. So you're learning from these people, but also it's like the Oprah effect. Like you interview them and they make you look like the expert. Oprah did phenomenal at this as an interviewer. She always asked phenomenal questions, insightful questions that made their guests feel seen and heard. But as a result, she looked like and became an expert by proxy as well. So it's this theory that is known as content based networking. You create content, you invite people on your podcast. Maybe if it's not a podcast, you want to do YouTube, sure, whatever you want. A blog, if you're writing a blog, you can invite them to have a piece of advice or quote on your blog, whatever content it is. You invite them to be on it just for free, no strings attached. And then you create the content and release it. And then you've built a network, you've built a relationship with that individual. And as a result of doing so, I've actually been able to connect and have an interview with the former vice president of operations for Walt Disney World Resort. I've been able to interview the VP of creative for the company that creates the merchandise for both Universal and Disney. It's called Loungefly. And talk to people that I would never have dreamed of, all from my house, like without even leaving anywhere. So yeah, that's kind of the summary of that. It's really cool. It's really exciting, and I'm very much passionate about it. So yeah, that's basically it.
I know there's so much to share. You can just go on and on.
I know you're gonna have to like cap me, get my time going here.
No, I get it because I have the same feeling about it. I'm a dog person. Everybody that knows me knows I'm a little over the top with dogs, but thanks to my podcast and talking about dogs, I've met some really interesting people and some of my heroes, I'm going to say, here, like in the field of,
Yeah.
working with dogs or training or whatever, in the border collie world and so, yeah, I get it. The networking alone is it's invaluable for so many reasons. It's personally, makes you happy personally because these are people that you want to talk to. Professionally, it's amazing because you connect with people you can never touch otherwise. There's no way. So, yeah. And you only have like 6 episodes out or something, right? Is that what
Yeah,
you told me?
I only have like 6 episodes out now, and the amount that I've been able to stretch that content by like taking bits and pieces of the interview and like posting it on Instagram, posting it on Facebook or LinkedIn has made it more beneficial than if I were trying to sit down every single day and think of something new to post or create. So it's amazing because it's something that you own. You will always own that content. No other company or website will own it. Um, and you can use it as much as you want or reuse it as much as you want. So the way that you strategize promotion of your content is what's going to be more beneficial than the amount of content that you create.
Very true. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you so much. That's such good information and advice. I'm looking at the time. So should we open it up for, well,
Yes.
actually, any advice? I guess you could say any advice that you would give someone to do this. We could talk about that a little bit too. Like you've given a bunch. I don't know if there's anything else you want to dovetail into that. And then we can open
Yeah.
up for question and answer. Go ahead.
My advice is just to start. Start with whatever you have. Don't spend like I did 6 months Googling the best microphone, Googling the best headphones, Googling the best platform. All that tech stuff, like that happens with time. You can use what you have to start and interview someone. It's a conversation at the end of the day. And as you grow in your ability to have conversation and your ability to network and get in the swing of things, all that other stuff will come with time. And there are people and resources that can help you with that. And then the other thing is, I'll very quickly throw in if you start doing a podcast and you hate it, you can start over. So I've tried 3 other podcasts before I got to this one that I like now. I've tried it with other people. We didn't work well together and I had to start over. So don't be ashamed or scared to fail because from every failure that you think that you've made, you're actually learning and growing from it. And again, if you're a student or if you're working somewhere, this is just for fun. It's not a life or death situation. Just start over, delete it, and then it's a good laugh that you can have later when you look back and you're like, yeah, maybe I didn't know anything when I tried to make a podcast about like beauty and fashion and like all like like whatever it is. So yeah, that's my empowerment or encouragement for you.
And again, it's great because you're being totally honest. I don't like it when people act like they're successful. They always have been. They haven't stumbled and fallen. And like you said, you tried something, it didn't work, but you also didn't give up. You kept looking
Yeah.
at it. And you and I have spoken about how it's so crucial to be super niche. And I've spoken with different students and people, and the more niche you are, like Disney business, like that is so niche, right? It's not
Yeah.
Disney. It's not visiting Disney, which a lot of people have done, you know. So you went in a very different area, and I don't know if you want to share like how you did a little of the research on that too, because that's
Yeah.
an interesting part also.
Yeah, I can definitely go into more of that, but I think we can kind of incorporate that into some Q&A. I really want to dive into discussion and like open up the stage here for whoever wants to ask questions or any of that.
And that's great because you've given us so much already to talk about. So if
Yeah.
you have questions, I mean, I'm fine with you coming on if you want on the mic, you know, have your voice on. This is about podcasting. But if you don't want to, you can put it in chat, folks. So please do that because Rita has shared a lot of information. And so, if also if there's anything you're not clear about, like how to, you know, work that LinkedIn or any, I don't know, anything that you're not clear about,
Yeah.
that's a great time. It's a great time to ask her, you know, while she has time and she's here. So let's see. Yeah, and if you want, just you know, I think you guys can unmute yourselves. I don't think I have it restricted or anything, by the way.
Um, excuse me. I have a question. So, when you made your podcast, like, how do you decide who to have as your platform? Or, like, what's more the business side of figuring all that stuff out?
Um, so the platform, do you mean like who's going to be hosting that? Like what website will
Yes.
host the podcast?
Yes. Like, how do you choose who's gonna host it? And, like, yeah, how would you choose that? Because I mean, I can record myself, I can edit it myself, but
Mm-hmm.
how do I get it out there?
Okay.
Like,
Thank you for clarifying that. Yes. So, there is something called a how do I put this? So there are different websites that will take your podcast and send it out to places like Apple, Spotify, Google, anywhere that you normally listen to podcasts. It's not like YouTube where if I made a video and uploaded it to YouTube, it would just like go out into the world. What you need is something called a podcast syndication platform. And that's the fancy way of saying like there are websites where you will upload your podcast to and it will send it to all of those places like Spotify and Apple. One that's really easy to get started on, it's called anchor.fm. Anchor is one that's sponsored by Spotify, and it's fairly simple to sign up, record your podcast, and upload to that website, and they will take your podcast and put it on all those platforms. If you did a little bit more research and you wanted to have more control over your podcast, I've tried Anchor and I have found that it doesn't really have all the features that I want. It comes down to like pricing of the platform, of course, whatever's in your budget. You want to make sure that you can afford. You do have to pay for the most part to have your podcast hosted by one of these platforms. Some of them are as cheap as a few dollars a month and can go up the scale. So obviously from a business aspect, cost is number one. Two, where do you want your podcast to be? If you want your podcast to play on a lot of places, doing it through Anchor, you won't get as many listens because I think it does it through automatically through Spotify, automatically through Google, but there are some manual actions you have to take to put it in other places. Personally, I use something called Sounder.fm. I like it because if I ended up paying like $12 a month for it, but the money is worth it to me because it automatically created a website for my podcast. So it also will take it and put it in all the places that I needed to. And if it didn't put it in a specific place, you can take something called the RSS feed. It will be in your like little portal for your thing, and you can copy it and upload it individually to any of the podcast platforms. So yeah, we can definitely do a whole special like segment on that at one point if you wanted to, like where I could show you how that works. But that's kind of the long short of the answer for you. I hope that was clear.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
that
there's
was.
different companies too, but we can definitely
Yeah.
help you with that, Karita. Definitely
I
help you.
also recommend there is a free podcasting course, 100% free by Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout is actually a company that is located in Jacksonville. Like they have their headquarters here. I've met them. They're very nice. They're super encouraging. And they are also another podcast syndication platform where you could upload to, but they might be good to start since they do have a free podcasting launch course and you can follow their steps to get your podcast live as well.
Right. And that's the company that hosts my podcast too. And
Yes.
I did it because they're local. I was trying to support local
Yes.
and like you said, they actually taught me a lot with the free videos. So it's a good way for them to get clients, you figure too. So that makes sense.
I'm
Yeah.
seeing a couple questions in the chat here. One is from Sarah, joined late. Have you addressed how to monetize your platform? So this is a very important question. And there's a couple ways you can do it. The easiest way to get started and monetize your podcast is kind of ties back to the first question that I was asked, is through the platform that you use. So Anchor and Sounder, I believe, you can choose to have them run an ad on your podcast. You click toggle a little button, drag and drop, and it'll basically say like, this podcast was created by sounder.fm or this was whatever. And you don't have to have many views or followers or whatever to do that. You can do that, just do it right off the bat. Now, this way to start is good just to like have like a few cents roll in every time somebody listens to your podcast. And it's also the easiest way. The second way is through sponsorships. So you might have seen on YouTube, every now and then you might watch your favorite creator and they'll be like, they have the same 3 companies that go hard on their sponsorships. So like, this video is sponsored by HelloFresh. And at this point you're like, yo, I've heard of HelloFresh so many times, like I'm over it. But they do it for a reason. So how you get connected to a brand like that is it's a little later on in the game. You need to focus on just creating fantastic content first. And then later, you might be able to connect with somebody from either their PR agency or their marketing on LinkedIn and kind of reach out to them directly that way. What you'll notice though is if you are focused on creating really fantastic content and you have your own website, sometimes their PR agents will reach out to you. So for me, I had a PR agent reach out to me for the Loungefly interview that I did with the VP of their creative. And they just saw that I had a great website and they saw my content and they wanted to partner with me. And it's up to you to determine the terms and conditions of that monetization, but that's something to focus on probably a little later down the line. I think more importantly, and something that I'm focused on, is just creating great content that people enjoy and trying not to put too many ads in the first season of the show so that it's something more entertaining for my listeners to kind of get them hooked and grabbed onto. And maybe within the next year or two, I'll start to focus on the monetization aspect. And then the last way, I'm sorry, this is very lengthy. The last way you can get monetized for your podcast is an inadvertent way. And that is through speaking engagements. So if you build yourself as a speaker or as a host, and you build your portfolio for being somebody that's a great interviewer, a great speaker, you try to get into different conventions as a speaker. When you start out, you might have to do it for free and volunteer. But after some time, you might get hired actually as a creator to come on and speak at a certain event. So for me, that is currently the route that I would like to take because I do have a job. I am fully employed at Sweetfish Media. And I'm not trying to use currently my podcast as my full-time source of income. So I'd like to take the keynote speaking route. So that's that. I hope that answered your question. I know that was very lengthy. I have a question from, I believe, Garrett Powell.
Well, Powell's the first name. Yeah.
Powell. Have I ever been nervous to talk to people? Yes. The answer is absolutely. When I had to interview the former VP for Walt Disney World, I literally was like sweating, like nervous, like shaking right before. And all you have to do is be prepared. It's okay to be nervous, but to combat that nervousness, you need your questions written down somewhere so that even if you're like freaking out, you can be like, okay, I just got to breathe through this. And then I'll ask my next question. This is question number 2, and we're going to get through it one question at a time. So the answer is absolutely yes. How would people combat awkward? This is from, is this Eden? Eden's question. How would people combat awkwardness and or nervousness when speaking and keep a podcast interesting? So keeping a podcast interesting is a very important skill. I would say, because especially if your podcast is pre-recorded, it's always good to meet your guest before you do the actual recording. So I do something called a pre-interview. We book it with the guest. It's like a 15-minute meet and greet, and we just talk. We just get to know each other. You know, we get that awkward, almost like first dateness, like out of the way, because it is odd and weird to like talk to someone you've never met before the first time and that conversation be recorded. Don't recommend it. Tried it before. It's not a good time. Just trust me on this. So meet them, build a relationship a couple times, whether it's through a couple DMs and a quick, definitely the 15-minute meet and greet. And then when you have your outline prepared and you actually do the interview, you'll be less nervous, and they'll be less nervous too. As far as keeping the podcast interesting, 2 things from that are important. Definitely the way you ask questions. You've all probably heard of this before, but these kinds of questions are important. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. That's like the basics of journalism. Who questions, what questions, why questions. Just like grill them like on every aspect that you possibly can. And in post-production, this is the second thing that you can do. In post-production, you can then view and listen all the answers and cut the parts that were not interesting. So post-production is really where more of that magic happens in a podcast. And it's less stress on you as a host because, again, you're having the conversation, and then later you can look back and be like, I rambled there for like 3 minutes. I'm going to cut that and whatever. And yeah, so that's, I think that answers the chat questions. Does anyone else have like actual like they want to hop on and just ask me something?
I got another question.
Yes.
What can Swedish do for, like, how much is it, and what does Swedish fish do for the podcaster?
Okay, so Sweetfish, I would not recommend for individual podcasters because it is a media agency for large B2B brands. But I actually do work on the side to help individual podcasters myself. I do some freelance audio editing, and I can send that information to Emily, and she can, send it out to whoever. As far as what you can do when you get started, I would recommend that focusing on just the audio is a good place to start. And then the second thing to do is to start working a little bit on your writing, because no matter how many audio episodes you record, there is something called a podcast like show notes. Like they're like show notes for your individual episode, right? And what you have to do is you have to summarize your conversation in like a few bullet points. And the show notes are kind of like, if you have you ever watched a YouTube video before and you've seen like the description at the bottom of the YouTube video? The show notes are basically that for a podcast. So you kind of need a podcast description for each episode. If you are unable to do that starting off the bat, you can actually just go to fiverr.com, and there are some people that'll charge very little money for just like bare bones show notes for you to get started, anywhere from like $5 to $10 an episode. But even if you don't want to pay for that, you can just listen to your episode, and I would recommend writing down the title of the episode, so what you want to call it, and then 3 main takeaways of the episode, so like 3 summary bullet points, and at the end listing like your social media handles or whatever. So that's kind of like a good place to start with that. But if you did want to dive more into help with audio editing, I do have some very reasonable audio only editing rates from that aspect too.
What about the advertising part of it? Can you expand? I know you talked about it a little bit,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
but
So, the advertising that's a very great question. Thank you for asking that. The advertising element is based, I used something called the pillar content theory. That is something that I can drop in the chat here for you in just a moment, but it's something that Gary Vee uses to promote his content. Let me just grab it really quick so that you have like a visual really quick of his blog. But basically, the idea is that you have one main piece of content and you can pick what that is. So in this case, we're talking about podcasting. If you didn't want to do podcasting, it's your YouTube video, whatever, right? Then you take that content and then you chop it up into little pieces based on the social platform you want to promote it on. So I think I got it here. It's right here in the chat. And what I do is I will take my podcast and I will make mini Instagram reels out of it. I'll make something called a micro video where it's like the guest speaking for a few seconds. I can find one of that for you from my Instagram. As well. And basically, like, I determine from each episode what content additionally I want to create, and kind of post it everywhere, like on my platforms. The where I post the most is on LinkedIn because LinkedIn right now has a very good, like the algorithm right now is just super great for natural reach and engagement. And if you want to build relationships and connections, what you do is you tag the person that you interviewed and you post it on LinkedIn. And what LinkedIn will actually do is when you tag that person, everyone from their network, even if you're not connected to them, can see that post as well. And it kind of turns into this like snowball effect. So even if you don't do the chopping up into many pieces, which I left a free presentation on how to do that here from the guy who created it, I would say number one, always make sure to tag the person that you interviewed in your creation. Because if you don't, you are missing out on that networking and having different eyes coming on to look at your work in your podcast.
Yeah, great. Great questions. Any other questions about
I
anything?
got a, I got a quick question because my podcast is not necessarily, or the one that I want to build is not necessarily like business or professional. Mine's I want to do like meditation on jujitsu,
Mm-hmm.
and then how Buddhism wisdom can help you in your life, no matter what religion you are, and
Okay.
how also that Buddhism has a lot of things that are scientifically proven. So
Okay.
how would I market that if it's not like business or professional related?
Yeah, definitely you wanna write down who your audience is. So the topic is definitely there. You need to narrow down exactly who the person would be listening to, like what they would do for a living, what age group are they in, what their interests are. And when you do that research, you can kind of figure out which platform would be best to promote on. I think you can definitely do TikTok for sure. You can turn your podcast into mini videos on TikTok. And how you do that is whenever you record your podcast episode, just make sure that you do it in a way where you can have separate video files. So you want a video file for you, and then you want one for yourself. You can do that for Zoom if you're starting out on Zoom. You can go into the settings and click like separate video tracks or separate audio tracks. And that way, when you're going back into edit, like you can go on your phone or whatever, and you can like drag the videos like on top of each other so that they turn into that like portrait up and down landscape. There's also something called Descript, which is free for a certain amount of videos or certain amount of hours that you can do that kind of editing style with. I think TikTok and Instagram Reels and even YouTube Shorts would probably be the most beneficial marketing strategy for the kind of podcast you want to create, since it's a little more lifestyle oriented. And that's really where that audience is.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, you're welcome.
Great. Thank you so much. So much information. And I guess that's the next question for us too, folks. Are you interested in more sessions to learn how to, the equipment and how to set up your podcast? And there's a lot of pieces to it, but we were thinking we could continue to do some mini workshops like this and just, get together. We could either do it in person here at Deerwood, or so if you are interested in that, if you could put that in the chat, or I could put in the chat my email if you want to email me. As you think about it, and think about what we talked about today, I'll put that in there. So you're welcome to email me and let me know. Because I think it could be very beneficial. You can learn from our mistakes, basically, is what it is. And we have another person here at Deerwood that podcast as well. He's been doing it for at least a couple of years. So he would be another person that we could, use the advice of. And then if you are interested in using our podcasting room too, I want to just share this before I forget, before everybody leaves, but I'm going to drop the, right? Yeah, I mean, it's all set up. It's for you guys. It'll definitely be available after our spring break, maybe before. I just don't want to promise you too early. We're having to move some things around. So that's that. So I want to put those things out before I forget, because, that'll happen while we have
Yeah.
an active audience.
And if
Any other
anyone
questions?
sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
If anyone has questions after the fact or they want to reach out to me, I'm dropping my LinkedIn in the chat. Please feel free to connect with me. You can DM me, and then you'll be able to see kind of more in real world how I do what I do online. And then also, I will link you in a moment my podcast's Instagram if you're more comfortable using Instagram. It's not fully created right now just because I just kind of started the Instagram for it. I'm more business heavy, so I do more on LinkedIn. But if you want to see examples of the kind of micro video pillar, whatever content I was talking about, you can check that out here, Bippity Boppity Business. And then my website is Bippity Boppity, I'm going to type it right in, biz.com. So you can see my show and all of my information there.
And I put your YouTube in there because I did watch your
Yes.
video with that Loungefly
Mhm.
person, and that was fascinating. I learned so many things I didn't know about the products, and no offense, but I'm just not a big Disney person, but I learned a ton. Like, it was really interesting. It was really well done.
Yeah.
So I wanted to share that
My
with you.
goal is to make sure that the content is definitely themed Disney, but you will gain value from it that you can implement in either your business or career. So,
Very true, and it did that. So yes, good question. I could send out, if you can email me, I could send you the link to it, because I know it'll like do its thing and then send me the link for the recorded, this recorded version. So, and I'm so glad you are all here today. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Rita, so much for your time and your valuable advice and information. And yeah, email me, folks, if you are interested in continuing on the conversation.
yeah, thank you guys so much. This has been an awesome pleasure. And like I said, I was at FSCJ and I started from nothing, and just consider me like your podcast fairy godmother. If you have questions, come to me. I will do whatever I can to help you. So,
Thank you, Rita. You're the best. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.